Hey, what's happening? Ed Reiner here, your daily dose of mind stuff. Having a little issue with StreamYard and some of its functions, so let's see, pause that. So music might start here, things might pop up. There is a definite lag, there was that, in some of the stuff going on. Let me see, I'm going to add Facebook in. There's some issues with Facebook as far as the scheduling. So I don't know. Internet issues, you never know what's going to happen. But we are live day 59 with Daily Dose of Mind Stuff, 59 of 100. We've been going through the Born Rich program seminar that Bob Proctor did back in the 80s with John Canary, where he goes over every idea, concept, everything that he's taken and that he had at that point researched and put into one seminar. It was based off of the book he wrote, You Were Born Rich, which I've got here. That was an international bestseller that he wrote. And basically, if you're familiar with Bob's story at all, he took everything that he did once he figured out what happened to him to go from $4,000, earning $4,000 a year to 175 and then over $1 million, which 175 back in 1961 would be the equivalent of $1.7 million. So from which was about 30 some thousand to 1.7 million, then over 10 million in today's dollars. Absolutely phenomenal. Didn't know what he did. All of a sudden things just started happening for him, and it took him 9 years to figure it out. And once he figured it out, Born Rich, that book and this seminar is basically the steps that he took and he figured out. So that's what the seminar is about. And today we are moving on to a super, they're all important subjects, but this is one that a lot of people never get this piece of the puzzle in place, and therefore things don't change. And we're going to go into the image maker. So I believe both of them talk on the image maker. I believe, I'm not sure if John starts or if Bob, but let's just head on over to there right now, and we'll share the screen, and we're going to move to the image maker. Bear with me because things are running slow today. All right, I'll see you guys in a minute.
Are we ready?
Yes.
How do you feel?
Wonderful.
You know, a number of years ago, I had an opportunity to work in a couple of educational institutions. And if you were to go, how many people from Mississauga? We got some people from Mississauga. You know, as you go up Highway 10, just past Eglinton, you see two big buildings on the left-hand side if you're going north. And one building is the Peel Separate School Board, and the other one is the Public School Board. And I've had an opportunity to speak in one of those beautiful buildings. And anytime that I ever go there, I always speak on this subject, psycho-cybernetics. And one of the reasons I speak on it, because really, I think it's the bottom line in not just selling, but in living, period. Because Maxwell Maltz has probably put together the best piece of material that has ever been put together on this subject called psycho-cybernetics. Now, when I go to any one of those places, I will put something like our stick person on the board, and I will put the idea in the bottom part of the personality that we've been referring to, the subconscious mind. And then I will write in there, SI, and I ask them to let that represent what is called their self-image. Now, I want you to really think about this. I start off every single self-image seminar exactly the same way. And I'll say something like this. We don't have what is called a drug problem on our campuses today. Not at York University, not at the local high school. not at any school in this country. And I will deliberately walk to the podium and I will stop. And I'll pause for about 30 seconds after I make that statement. And you can see people elbowing each other or whispering to each other, wondering, where did they get this one? Because you see, that's kind of a ludicrous statement. Bob mentioned this morning that dis-ease is a symptom. The use of drugs is a symptom behind which there lies a cause. Because we don't have, as Maltz mentioned, we don't have a drug problem, we don't have a drinking problem, we don't have a financial problem, we don't have a relationship problem, and we don't have, you could say, a productivity problem. The only problem we ever have with respect to those areas is a self-image problem. Now put your thinking cap on and examine this idea. I started off this morning and I said this: you can take anything that I'm going to say, or Bob, and you can reject it. You can do that. Or you can take the information and you can accept it. You can do that. Or you can just neglect it. And I said, don't accept, don't reject, and don't neglect what you hear. But I mentioned that only a fool would not take an idea, kick that idea around to see if it would change, alter, and or improve the end result for a happier, healthier, more productive life. You see, if there was one thing that I ever wanted to get across to my kids or to you, is that our self-image, it sets the boundaries of performance in your life and in mine. We cannot outperform our self-image. We will never do it. Whether it's weight, and Bob will go over this in detail, whether it's income, whether it's relationships, no matter what it happens to be, our image is the governor that sets the boundaries of performance in each and every area of our life. Our image. Now think about this. I want you to imagine for a moment, I want you to go way back to when Socrates was teaching. Now Socrates taught much, but he wrote very little. Plato took what he learned from Socrates and he put it into words, and we were all the benefactors of the work of Socrates. So Socrates decided that he was going to try to use an analogy to teach people something about this governor, about this concept, about this belief system, this idea, this image of self, and how it controls all the performance in each person's life. And this is the way he was able to do it. He said, I want you to imagine all these prisoners in an underground den. He said they have been there since birth, and they're all lined up beside one another. He said they're chained at the neck, they're chained at the feet, and they're chained at the hands to one another, and they all stand in an even line. They can sit, they can stand, they can turn their head each way, they can take a step this way and a step that way, but that is the extent of it. Which is symbolic to mean that many of us stand on what is called this 50-yard line of life, afraid to go for the goal because we might miss. We don't want to go too far back because we might fail. We don't seem to understand that it's got something to do with the concept or the image we hold of us. He said, now, I want you to imagine that they have never, ever laid eyes on human life because the cave is dark. They cannot see one another. Now, he said, in front of all of them, there is a big wall from which shadows are moving back and forth. And he said, from these shadows, there are voices coming as though they're coming right from the shadows directly to the prisoners in this underground den. Are you with me? Now he said, the shadows and the voices are coming from one area of the den. Way back behind these prisoners, there are people walking back and forth, unaware of the prisoners further in the den. And he said what they are people coming in from the ocean, going up through a cave, carrying treasures from their ships that they took at sea. And as they walk by a flaming fire, and as they do, their shadows bounce off the wall of the den and come back at the prisoners who are staring at the wall. And as they speak, their voices travel and they echo from the wall, so it would appear that the voices and shadows on the wall of the den to the prisoners is real. They have no knowledge of what's going on at the back. Now, I want you to imagine that one day, the chains break away from the one prisoner standing at the end of this line. I want you to picture that. He's standing here, and the shackles fall from the prisoner. As they fall from him, he looks and he sees a light coming down from the surface of the den, coming out in the shape of an elbow directly in the area he is looking. Now, since all of us, you and I, since all of us are motivated to move in the direction of the light, in other words, every single person in this room is genetically structured to grow, to move in the direction of a light. You put a potato in a cellar, and that potato will grow in the direction of any kind of light coming through to it. Well, this prisoner spots the light and begins to move in that direction. Don't you think that as he begins to move, there would be some apprehension of some kind? And as he gets close to the light, he puts his head into that elbow and he looks up and he experiences the entire spectrum of light to the point it almost blinds him. It's overwhelming. But again, being genetically structured to continue to move in the direction of the light, he begins to climb. And don't you think as he begins to climb, he's going to feel some fear? Yes. And as he reaches the surface, he looks and he sees the sky, some clouds, the trees, and all that nature has to offer. Don't you think he would now be in a state of awe? Yes. Do you think now that what he once thought was real is not necessarily real, that maybe there was something beyond the light? That in other words, the way he was living and the results that he was getting or that he has, that suddenly now he realizes there is something more he could possibly do? And as he begins to walk around, he comes to a little lake. And he looks in and he sees an image, and he begins to run from the image. Wasn't he looking at an image of self? And as he backtracks, he stands at the den and he can hear the prisoners yell, "Return, we'll offer you rewards to tell us what you found beyond the den." Do you think he'd care for such honors? And if he did go down and tell them what he found, do you think they would believe him? And if he did go back down and he walked up, wouldn't they say, "Ah, you see, up he went, down he came. Isn't it better not to ascend at all?" You see, the real danger is you will never get from the underground den or escape from a prison unless you recognize you're in one. And many of us are like prisoners living in an underground den. And the moment that we begin to attempt to even see ourselves as we would rather, or as we could, or as we want to be, keep in mind we are forever going to be pulled, grabbed, held onto as a hostage by the prisoners in the underground den. By the prisoners in an underground den. Something quickly that I had on here and it's disappeared. Way over in Africa, they take a little beast. when it's brand new, it's called an elephant. And they take this little elephant, they put a chain around its leg. And they take this 3-foot chain and they put it on a little stake and they put it in the ground. And you know, for days and days, this little guy, he begins to pull and pull against the stake and chain, but he's too weak at that time to dislodge it. He tries and he tries and he tries for days and days and days, but soon he gives up because he's too weak to pull the chain. Do you know, folks, years and years later, when this beast is fully grown, capable of pulling loaded railway cars, capable of pulling 10 times its own weight, at the end of a working day, they will take him, put the chain around his ankle, put it on that little 3-foot chain onto the stake in the ground. Something that he could pull out at a moment's notice. But he continues to hang on to that chain. He will not move. The only thing that might move the elephant is fire. He will actually stay until he starves to death. What is really holding the elephant? Conditioning? Well, you see, an elephant doesn't have a self-image. But here's the most interesting thing you can learn from what Bob is going to take you through. There isn't a person in this room that was born with a self-image. I think that in that book, one of the, I guess you could say, the greatest point of awareness, that when I read this, was one thing, that I wasn't born with a self-image. But nobody that I've ever met can explain how to alter it like Proctor can. Or like Proctor can. So at the very top of this page, which is page 21, the ideas contained in this chapter could very well be the breakthrough for you, because image making, once we get a firm grip on it, is a truly dynamic idea. Now, believe me, I want to emphasize this. I don't know any one lesson or any half hour or 20 minutes that can alter or effectively alter your life like the one that you're going to experience right now. I want to suggest right at this moment that you'll listen to the cassette and read the chapter over a few times. I would suggest that anybody who would just take this one tape from this chapter and take the book, and if they just exercised it for an entire month, things would never be the same again. What is it Goethe, the great German philosopher, said time and time again? He said, before we can do something or anything, we must first be something. You see, the great conflict is in what you want to be versus what you want to, what you are versus what you want to be. As you are is not how you must remain. What you be, what you want to become, that's what we're working on. So before we can do something, we must first be something. Most people live and die and never fully understand the power of image making. Understand that we are relating this idea to money in this particular chapter and to other areas, as you'll see when we get into it. But I want you to know that once you fully understand the image making concept, you can effectively use it for whatever good that you desire. For whatever good that you desire. You know, the change in relationships alone will absolutely stagger you. Will absolutely stagger you. The way you feel about you, the insensitive comments that you may get, you know, they'll hit you and they'll just rebound off you like water off a fish, because you'll have an understanding now that you're in control. Not the comment, not the person that's making it. You'll be in control. It says the knowledge of image making eliminates competition from your life. Think about this. Professionals create, amateurs compete. Professionals create, amateurs compete. The whole idea here is a simple one. In conflict, you have two choices. You have a choice to defend yourself, or you have a choice to learn in the conflict. If you make the choice to defend yourself, you're going to try to protect yourself. If you protect yourself, you're going to blame someone. And if you blame someone, you're going to miss all the joy that could be yours. But if you take the attitude to learn, you're going to make it. One last statement, and then I want to bring Bob back on. The Spanish distiller at the bottom of the page, just draw a circle around it, because you see, you're either a prisoner in the underground den or you're on the surface enjoying all the greatness, all the goodness, and all the joy that is your birthright. The good life then is expensive. There's another way to live that doesn't cost much, but it isn't any good. It isn't any good. So let's get the all level of energy up again and bring on Robert.
Okay. Thank you, John. On page 22 in your action planner, I want to suggest that you take the chapter on the image maker and read it over a couple of times. Not once, read it over 2 or 3 times. I have found that as we read things over, they start to take on a different meaning. I read somewhere in a book where it said, when you read a good book through the second time, you don't see something in it you didn't see before. You see something in yourself that wasn't there before. So as we go through this chapter a couple of times, we'll start to relate to it a little different. Now, I want to suggest that at the end of this particular lesson, you sit down with the new understanding that you have from the information we've already covered and stop and ask yourself, what areas of my life would I really like to change? Take a look at some of the results you're getting at the bottom of page 22 and list some of the results you'd like to change. Now, at the top of page 23 is a quote that come out of Maxwell Maltz's classic Psycho-Cybernetics. Psyche being Greek for mind, cybernetics being the science of control and communication in our marvelous mind. Now, Maltz said, we act, we behave, and feel. Now, think of what we're talking about here. We act, we behave, and we feel. The vibration that we're in most of the time, according to what we consider our self-image to be. And we do not deviate from that pattern. This is the one stumbling block that many people have. You're going to hear from a man in a few minutes that made a phenomenal change just through understanding this one idea. And I'm going to tell you, the man was brilliant when he got the idea. It was just one small change. This could be the one you want to make. Now, Maltz explained that the image you hold of yourself is a premise, a base, or a foundation. It's nothing but an idea in your mind upon which your entire personality is built. He concluded this image not only controls your behavior, yet controls your circumstance as well. Now, it would take a respectable understanding to grasp that. How could an idea in our mind literally change the circumstances in our life? Well, by the time you finish this seminar, the various subjects in it, you're going to know exactly how those circumstances can change. It'll be very clear to you. But I can assure you, you alter this image in your mind that John was talking about. You take this idea of what you want to be and learn how to plant it in here and release this idea. Like that, your life will change. And you're going to hear from someone who made a big change. Now, let's take a look at this idea of cybernetics. You know, a number of years ago, many years ago, I bought this book. It was out around 1960, and it was shortly after that I got it. And like most of these books I get, I read it over and over and over again. Now, let me digress for a second. I was in a seminar that there was a amount of information of why we do what we do. And I remember we were working with a loose leaf exercise book. It was in Chicago that I was in the seminar, although Dr. Roeder is a Canadian. And he said something that really sunk in, and on the first page in the book, I wrote it. He said, you do not understand something until you can explain it to someone else. And explain it to someone else so that they understand it. Now, that was written in a book a long time ago. I wrote it, as Harry said it. I'd read this book before that, and I read it off and on every year or two. I'll read it a couple of times. Someone came up to me in a seminar one day years ago, and they said, Bob, do you know what cybernetics means? I said, yeah. They said, well, what does it mean? I said, well, it's and all I could see was the front page of that book where Dr. Roeder said, you do not understand something until you can explain it to someone else so that they understand. And I didn't know how to explain it. Now, this chapter or this paragraph on page 23 is right out of this book. I went and got the book out again, and I started to study it. And I got some other books on cybernetics, some real heavy stuff, and I started to study it. Now, let's read it. Cybernetics is the science of control and communication in the animal and in some machines. It is based on the fact that both biological organisms and some machines have sensors that measure deviation from a set goal. These sensors signal feedback into a coordinating mechanism, your nervous system, which corrects the output or the behavior of those same organisms or machines. Now, if you're reading a page and you go spinning past that paragraph, I think you'll have to admit it'd be pretty easy not to understand what you've just read. Now, you just read, in fact, I read it to you and you probably followed me. You might ask yourself, could you really explain that to someone? Well, I obviously couldn't. That's why it's so essential that we listen to this over and over again. A couple of us were talking at the break. And this gentleman just come back. He came back. He'd just been through the seminar. He came back through it again. And he says, it's so much different. And I said, every time you go through it, it's different. I said, that's because you're operating with a higher awareness and you'll see things you weren't able to see before. Now, turn over onto page 24. This page could be worth its weight in gold along with the other two pages. Let's let this circle that you see at the top of the page, you're at the top of page 24, let that represent a thermostat in your home. And we take this thermostat and we set the dial to control the room temperature at 72 degrees. That is the set goal. Now, what'd they say? It says it has a sensor in it to measure deviation from a set goal. It signals this deviation into a coordinating mechanism, which then corrects the output. Let's suppose the room temperature is at 72 degrees. Someone leaves the front door open, and it's cold. You're in the northern part of North America, and the temperature drops quickly to 68 degrees. The sensor in the thermostat picks up that deviation. It sends a message through the electrical system in the house to the furnace. The fire's turned on, the fan's turned on until that room temperature is brought back under control again at 72, then it cuts out. Let's look at it in another machine. We'll say this is an airplane. Well, that wasn't nice. I'll bet you couldn't draw it any better. It's quite obvious I haven't majored in art. Like the guy said he majored in the minors. All right. Now, this airplane, let's suppose it leaves Pearson International Airport in Toronto, and it's going to LAX or Los Angeles in California. When the pilot leaves the vicinity of the international airport here in Toronto, the pilot sets a cybernetic mechanism. That's called an automatic pilot. Then you see the guy with the 4 stripes wandering down the plane and, how are you today, sir? You having a nice trip? Enjoying yourself, ma'am? I used to sit there and I think, why doesn't he get back in that room up front? I didn't feel particularly comfortable screaming through the sky at that height, and the guy that's in charge of the ship wandering around, inquiring as to the state of my health. But I would feel much healthier if I didn't see you wandering around this plane. But it didn't make any difference. He could have come back and sat with us. That plane was under control. It had an automatic pilot, a cybernetic mechanism. Now, let's suppose that airplane got hit with some unexpected turbulence and bang, it got knocked off course. The automatic pilot would pick up the deviation from the set goal. If it didn't, this thing might end up somewhere down around Juarez, Mexico. It signals a message through the electrical system in the airplane. The wings are changed. The engine thrust is changed, and that plane is brought right back under control again. Now come down and take a look at these two people on page 24. We'll just draw one. This person has an image in their mind. I'll use the concept that we could all relate to. Let's suppose this person's a salesperson or they're a student. You could use either one. Let's suppose the salesperson sells $1 million worth of their product or service every year. Do you know large sales organizations can pretty well tell you what their sales force is going to write at the beginning of the year? If they have a contest and they send them off to some exotic place on a trip for writing so much business, and they name where they're going to go today and they're not going to go for a year, do you know that they can book the seats on the plane now? They know exactly how many rooms that they're going to rent. That's because people very rarely deviate from their set objective. They're locked into a habit pattern. What we could switch this, and let's say it's a student that gets a C average. Now, this salesperson may get a real pep talk in a sales meeting or something. No understanding, just motivation, no education. They get all wound up and they go out and in a week, they write $350,000 worth of business. Their self-image picks up the deviation from the set goal, sends it into a coordinating mechanism, the nervous system. A signal is sent and the behavioral patterns will change, and that person will quit selling until they're back on course again. Now, they may go through a period where they write nothing for a month. Self-image picks up that information, sends a message through the nervous system. The behavioral patterns will change. They'll get up and they'll start selling again. But at the end of the year, they still have written $1 million worth of business. Let's suppose it's a student that's getting a C average. They bring the report card home. Parents turn the heat up, turn the TV off, bicycle goes, girlfriends, boyfriends are out of the picture. Rarely put the pressure on the kid. The marks shoot up and they get 100% on a test. Self-image picks up that information, sends a message to the nervous system. The behavioral patterns will change, and pretty soon that child's back on course again. What's causing the problem? It's this image in here. That's what it is. That's not what they want to be, but that's what they are. At the bottom of the page, that drawing. On page 25, results in control of you, you in control of results.
Okay, well, excuse me, had to cough there. So I was busy taking notes there and kind of got lost in thought, as most of us do when we listen to these ideas and listen to Bob explain these ideas. So tomorrow, Bob is going to really dive into the self-image, and he's going to go over, like he said, results and control of you and control of results, which is going to be this in The Born Rich. So this whole idea of self-image, of us being an image maker, some of the key points that I have here. The image that you hold of yourself totally determines the results that you get in all areas of your life. Now, that can be hard for some of us to accept at times. We portray this outer image of who we want to be, but this self-image, the image that we hold of ourself inside, is what controls everything. So this is a simple concept, but it's not as easy to execute. If we want to change the results, we need to change the image. And the image is a part of the paradigm. So when we're doing this, we're changing the paradigm. You are limited in your thinking and achievement according to your present mental conditioning. So your present mental conditioning, and we'll bring out the stick person here. Your present mental conditioning, the image that you hold, all of that stuff that we're talking about is right here in the subconscious mind. It's all held here in the subconscious mind. So we can change. Here's the beautiful thing is we can change the limitations by building a new picture. We build a new picture of what we want to be, do, or have. So we build this new picture inside here in the conscious mind, and we're going to impress it into the subconscious mind. And Bob's going to go over this tomorrow when he talks about building the new self-image. So image making enables us to move from the competitive plane to the creative plane. And that's where we want to be, is in the creative plane. We only want to compete with ourselves. Now, don't misunderstand me. If you're into sports and things, you're competing. But when we go to a creative plane, there's more than enough for everyone on the creative plane. And we're dealing with the essence of our spiritual being, which is always for expansion and fuller expression and creation. We're not competing with anyone. When we understand that, we can really start to do some amazing things with our life and ourselves and for others. And the last one I had on here was that professionals create, amateurs compete. The self-image sets the boundaries for our performance in life, and it serves as a governor, determining the results we get, whether they're in weight loss, our income, any other goals that we're trying to accomplish, as Bob explained, as that cybernetic mechanism. If our self-image is in harmony with something here, whatever this result is over here, as we start and move out and we start to shoot for something out here, that self-image picks up the deviation from the set goal and what it's in harmony with, and it corrects and creates the behavior. Our nervous system changes, our behavior changes to where we are right back. That's why people will change. That's why we have people on yo-yo diets all the time. They can't lose weight because it's not in harmony with this. They might for a period of time, but before you know it, they're right back to where they were, or even gained more. So we have to change that image, and that's what Bob is going to be going on. And it's interesting that, we're at this point because this is something that for the past couple of days, aside from the other things we've been studying here, that I've been working on. I've got a whole list of stuff here that I've been typing out. These are all things based off of improving the self-image, because no matter how strong your self-image may be, you can always improve it. So a lot of people say, I got a problem with my self-image. When we start diving into this stuff, you don't have a problem. It's just what your current self-image is. It just is. It's not bad or good. It's what your thinking makes it. It just is, but it can always be improved. We can constantly improve upon it. I know people that are, 7-figure earners that are constantly redoing their self-image because they want to move. We're for expansion and fuller creation. We always want to move towards the light, as John was saying. So don't ever think that you have a bad self-image or a problem with your self-image, or you need to work on your self-image. It's just improving it. It just is. It's not good or bad. It can be improved upon, which everything in life can be improved upon. So these questions are questions that you have to ask yourself. What do I want to be, do, have? Use your imagination to create the life that you want to live. What does the person that you want to become, what does that person do? You have to really start to use your imagination to build these ideas and build this new self-image. And this is what Bob is going to cover tomorrow. So that's all the time we're going to spend on this today. I hope you got value out of this. I absolutely love this lesson, and it's very fitting that we're going into this now, because this is something that I'm currently redoing and improving on my self-image. And this is the process that I'm going through, which is perfect that these lessons are hitting at this exact time, because I'm literally yesterday started writing out and started to think about improving my self-image for the next level that I want to be at in my life and in my business, in my relationships. And to do that, I need to alter the self-image, because you look at where your results are, and that gives you an indication of where your self-image is. If you're not getting the results that you want, then you know that you have to tweak and change and improve upon that self-image. And it's that simple. Now, to execute it is not as simple. That takes some discipline and a decision. And we'll get into that another time. So, but for now, if you got value out of this, like, subscribe, share, come if you're watching the replay, come join me live, watch for the notifications of when I'm going live, and leave me comments in the chat so we can get some interaction going. Would be fantastic. And I will see you guys tomorrow, where Bob really gets into how we change this self-image and build a new one. So for that, and today, this is Ed Reiner with the Daily Dose of Mind Stuff. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace. God bless. And the music's working.